Dear friends, good afternoon. We are starting our expert discussion, Modern Public Administration, Changing for You. So any changes, specifically changes into public administration, require wait and well-informed approaches. That is why we started our work several minutes late, so just trying to realize what we are going to discuss and where we are moving. That is why I would like to apologize for this delay. So practically this time shift is observed in all meeting rooms, and it's not only we are to blame for this, for late beginning, but some good news. This meeting room was provided by organizers to us several hours after the start of the work. We don't have any time restrictions and limits in terms of discuss, and we leave this room after we completely change the public administration as we agreed in our expert discussion. So I see some support. It's very good with some finished results. You return to your region and everything is working smoothly and well. Once again, good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. Maybe I would like to introduce today's moderator speakers and keynote reporters, and maybe provide some brief comments regarding the topic of today's discussion. I will start on my right. Nikolai Lyubimov, Governor of Ryazan region. Vadim Zhivulin, Deputy Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation. Andrei Klitschkov, Governor of Oryol region. Natalia Sybaryova, Deputy Governor of Kaliningrad region. Andrei Vakhnin, Deputy Director of the Department of the State, and so on and so forth, of the Ministry of Labor of Russia. Konstantin Abramov, Director of the National Social and Administration Institute and Chairman of TSIOM. Mikhail Predilnikov, Deputy Head of the Analytical Center under the Presidential Administration of Russia. Alexander Gusev, Governor of Voronezh region. Andrei Soroka, we expect him to come a little bit later. He's currently at the meeting. Andrei Chibis, Deputy Head of Minister of Construction. Alexei Khersontsev, Head of the Federal Service on Accreditation. Andrei Betin, Deputy Governor of the Nizhny Novgorod region. Roman Petrynyov, sorry, I apologize. Roman Petryaev, Deputy Chair of the Government of the Ryazan region. Andrei Orlov, replacing Andrei. Andrei Orlov, Deputy Head of the Government of the Tver region. Maria Nozhenko, leading expert of the Applied Analysis of Northeastern Institutes under the President of Russia, and Rustam Kasimov, Rector of Academy of Public Administration of Uzbekistan. Tabir Hassanov, Dean of the University of the Public Administration of Uzbekistan. Right. And sorry, it's not convenient to look aside. My colleague moderator of today's expert discussion, Alexei Shepov, Director, Center for Change Management of Public Administration, Presidential Administration, RANEPA, and the main moderator, Dmitry Butashin, Vice Rector, RANEPA. Happy birthday, Dmitry. It's 4:30 and you're so decent person, you're still sober. Take hint is taken next year. We practically, the sky is the limit in our work, so we will work till final victory. Colleagues, I see many of you present in this room.
Was here last year. Back then we had a joint session devoted to public administration. This year we have this title, Modern Public Administration Changing for You. Last year we made a message that it's only together that the authorities and the people will be able to change the situation and improve the efficiency and achieve specific results in public administration. And after yesterday's panel discussion, we started preparing for this session. Colleagues present here, we started actually a pilot project on modern public administration, not only in regions. Well, Alexei Khersontsev is here. Alexei, yeah. Left, right. Just a bit confused. So, Rosakkreditatsiya, the only federal agency that participated in this pilot project. Well, the first thing, normally, when we start big projects like this, consulting projects, first we start with a study analyzing the situation, the as-is situation. And the study showed that on the results of the last year's session, we came to understand that the main demand from the people, from the population, that the public administration should change. So, we conducted a lot of activities together with colleagues to better understand what particular should be changed, how quickly the change should take place, and how to measure the changes that we want to implement. We're going to discuss that in detail today. And maybe, well, the main topic for today would be this. No matter what things we want to change or what technologies we want to implement or the strategies that we want to take, what priorities we make, well, still the success would depend on the people that are going to implement all those great plans. So personnel, HR, is going to be prominent in all parts of today's discussion. And I would ask all speakers to also touch upon that aspect in their presentation and express their opinion on the importance of personnel, HR, in this process and what can be done to make sure HR policy is efficient, proactive, and great in supporting the innovation that we want to implement. The format today, or you want to tell us about the format. We're going to have four sections for the discussion. In each of the sections we will have a presentation, one presentation. We have actually three regions with pilot projects, Voronezh, Ryazan, Leningrad Oblast, where we will test the modern governance concept. And we asked our colleagues, partners, Alexander Gushev, Nikolai Lyubimov, Natalia Sibirova, to share their experience with the project and their vision of why we need that in the first place, and has it been successful, what been done so far, what is planned ahead. Roughly we will have 10 minutes for each presentation and about 20 minutes discussion. The format is traditional for our events. It's open, free discussion, although we're wearing ties, many of us. Please feel free to ask questions, share your ideas. Please don't hesitate to do that, whether you're seated at the table here or in the audience. Now Alexei's turn. Thank you. Good afternoon, dear participants. Thank you, speakers, for coming here, for joining the discussion. Thank you, all the participants, all the people in the audience, for showing interest. I hope the methodology we're going to briefly discuss here will give rise to new ideas and to questions. We want the discussion to be open and focused on those sections that we identified. So, let me introduce to you, I see this for the first time, no, kidding, the three areas where we have the pilot projects on modern governance. We thought we need changes in strategic governance, in organizing the activity, in processes and structures of the authorities, and of course we need innovation, new things in HR, in support personnel. Well, like we had that discussion last year, some people participated and would remember we had a discussion back then. Which one of the three is most important? We discussed it then. Strategy, processes, or HR? And there was sort of a battle between the participants. We split into tables, each one supported each one of the areas. Processes won then. I was present actually at that table, the winning table. Doesn't mean anything though. But as a follow up on that idea, we came to the following conclusion. Within these three seemingly independent areas, we have which areas? Each of the area has a place for strategy, processes, and personnel. And we're going to start the first part of the discussion. We're going to discuss strategic planning, and I will share the vision of our vision of this, and then we start the discussion. So, actually, last discussion, one of the participants asked, "What's a quality strategy?" And now I'm trying to answer this question. Quality strategy is the strategy that can be implemented. So, strategy as a strategy. Do we often, and let's admit it to ourselves, or do all of us ever read the strategy of social economic development of the region to the final page? And do we know our position, our role in implementing those goals and priorities? Well, supposedly we did. But we think that for it to be clear, we should convert the strategy into clear numbers, to focus on these numbers in implementing the strategy dashboard. And strategy as a process. After the strategy has been developed, strategic planning exercise is over, but that's only the start of it, right? We need to create a complete strategy cycle from planning to control and analysis to make sure this is implemented in real life. Do we have the processes organized for the purpose of this strategic cycle that should come back every year, that should be traced, monitored, analyzed, with adjustments made? And the final part for strategy is personnel. Coaching. Does that word confuse you? A new word, somebody says. No. Well, our top team, the first and foremost who should implement the strategy, do they think in that way? Are they ready for the challenge? Are they capable to answer the harsh questions that may come their way? This is the purpose of this today's discussion, to discuss all of these areas and to share specific case studies, the experience that our speakers have. So, now, for introductory presentation, it's going to be the governor of Voronezh region. The floor is yours. Dear Dmitry, colleagues, good afternoon. My presentation is about a joint project of RANEPA and the government of Voronezh district, which is called Joint Governance of Voronezh region. The presentation is called The Fleet of Change. That's this painting done by 80 participants in the strategy sessions, and they did that simultaneously, and you see how it works out. Well, it looks better in real life, that painting, joint painting. The mission of a regional government, I will be focused on practical aspects more. The mission of the regional authority is this: forming a favorable environment for the life of people and the development of businesses. To achieve the mission, we have developed a strategy for the development of Voronezh region until 2035, including all long-term projects during the period. The document is not limited to government, not only the government developed, but civil society, business, academic community were involved in developing the strategy, hopefully meeting the expectations of the residents of the region. This slide shows the priority objectives for the executive authorities of the region. The strategies all have numbers: expected lifespan, the dynamics of real monthly wages, the proportion of population with certain income brackets, etc., birth rates, all of that have specific targets associated with them, and with intermediary numbers for 2024-2030. This could sound a little bit critical in describing the current situation when we started implementing the process, but we hope, but at least this shows that we felt that there was need for change. As a starting conditions, we've defined this three priority areas: the system of a regional public administration, the strategy of quick change that would be understandable by the population, and quick wins, and forming new HR function and of government public administration bodies. Clearly, all our activities in selecting the priorities, while we checked that against the expectations of the people. and identified these quick wins, quick measures listed here. I will single out some of them. Well, comfortable city environment. That's a number one bullet point. Renovation of developed territories, implementing the smart city project, and another important light rail in Voronezh, reconstruction of city parks, transportation junctions, and yards. And there's a list of specific facilities where we start the construction or reconstruction or renovation project. It's 50 new outpatient clinic that we plan to build during 5 years, eliminate a second shift in secondary schools. There is a separate program to equip and reconstruct community centers and medical establishments. Key areas in our joint project with RANEPA is strategic management at the level of the region, organizational development of the public administration, and HR issues. And that's all shown on the slide. The focus is process approach oriented to the consumer, which is the people, and key performance indicators is the opinion of the people and the businesses on the fact. And we have a system implemented for this feedback from the people and the businesses. This slide is a generalistic, but of course, at every level of regional authority, we would want the system to be well structured to achieve the main result that we have in the strategy mission. And we did not start immediately applying everything to the whole government. We selected 3 structural units: Social Protection Department, Business and Trade Department, and Natural Resources and the Environment Department. These 3 departments have been selected for the pilot because they're important socially and they are engaged in different types of activities. And then we thought we can scale up the results, if successful, to the whole government of Voronezh region. Clearly, we developed proposals on how to improve the operation of these units and also the expected effect and measurements. In particular, those associated with the change of the structure and HR of these departments. Our purpose is not to reduce personnel, but this is happening actually. And as a motivational process, the payroll will not change, but there will be few people, so they will get higher salaries as a result. As we started that effort, we already implemented several managerial solutions. Deputies, chairman of government, and heads of department on a monthly basis prepare strategic reports on the operation of their departments. There's a system of dashboards implemented. I believe it's a very efficient tool, showing immediately the results of the activity of individual managers and their departments. That required changes in approach from some of the managers. And what's important there is that they feel the need for this productive reallocation of attention to daily and strategic tasks. And of course, very important to make sure the criteria that we're using to evaluate their activities are measurable and transparent. Reforming the various system will not achieve result unless we see what is the perception of the people. We covered some ground in modernizing the public and political system, giving more function, more importance to the public chamber, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and to public supervisory councils with the executive authorities, and there's a list of the actions that we completed there. Key in this effort is the document called the Strategy for the Development of the Region until 2035. It has been enacted, and in developing that document, we received about 2,000 proposals from the people. But it's not a final document carved in stone. We continue analyzing feedback from the people. We visit local places, identifying more problems and finding solutions to them. For us, a strategy is not a dead document. It's a living document which can be adapted all the time. Well, now the project itself. The main approaches were these. A strategy cycle was selected with the elements shown here, analyzing the as-is situation and conducting strategy session. As a result, we had that painting, remember? Actualizing strategic documents, plans, activities, and programs, detailing strategic documents that in daily plans, monitoring the performance of those plans, and evaluating the plans and implementing the strategy. These are the steps. Of course, we doing the audit of the system of HR support. This is one of the key aspects of all our activities, evaluating its readiness, providing the required HR resources. We plan to work out a concept of HR support which would identify the main requirements to the people in the HR of the government, the training, motivating those people. What we have to do here is create a set of professional requirements, and we do that with the use of strategic building blocks of competences, which we have thanks to RANEPA. To implement the processes that we started, we're planning and we actually build up the team of change. We had an open contest of managers. Up to 40% in that contest came from other regions or from other than public authorities. We now have this HR reserve. The doors continue to be open. This is not only for regional authorities but local authorities as well, and the business. So this HR reserve is not necessarily for the regional government. People can go only to a regional government system. Well, the audit of the existing system of HR support showed that the things that should be changed. Now, as a result, we have a concept of HR changes. It's like an HR strategy that we have right now. In the previous slide, it said that up to 10% loss of resources because, well, we don't find right candidates on time to fill vacancies. But, well, what this says, we need managers with different set of competences and skills who now have the skills of managing change. And within 5 years, we plan to increase the number of such people from 20% in our current evaluation to 70% of all the staff of the authorities. Another key element of reform, but of course the Academy, RANEPA helps us a lot, but we are creating our own center of efficiency that is going to play the functions of a driver of change within the government. Or formal activities have been completed, people have been hired, and they start their work in the center. And clearly, these are the people who will act as independent arbiters in evaluating the operation of top managers of the region by informing those dashboards. We hope that the best practices available in RANEPA will be accepted by this efficiency center and applied in practical terms, initially together with RANEPA and later on as we continue implementing change without their support. This slide shows that we're on the right track. The performance 2018 still estimates shows that most indicators were better than the average Russian performance, and our objective was to be among top 10 in the territorial units of the Russian Federation, which we achieved in 2018. This is the final slide. Does not mean this is the end of the project. We're actually entering the most active phase of the project right now. And we do hope and we do believe that another important result of the change is creating trust. The trust within the government itself, the government between the regional and municipal authorities, and also we hope very much that our federal colleagues from federal authorities would enjoy the same level of trust. Thank you, Alexander, for this. Well, you've been quite modest about in your report about big successes that you've achieved. Colleagues, as we had discussed, first we have a presentation, but then the most important part, we have to torture the speakers a little bit with our questions. Also, this is an opportunity to exchange opinions on the subject. The first part was about strategy. So if you have any ideas, comments that you want to share right now, please do so. If you have anything to add, do not to hesitate either. Or if you have an alternative viewpoint, please also share that. Just raise your hand, switch on the microphone, and go ahead. Vadim Zhivulin. Good afternoon, Dmitry, colleagues. I have a lot of questions. But one of the main ones is probably this. When you started the process of transformation, the people you worked with, who, well, took a lot of time to get used to old processes, what do you do with these people? What was their attitude towards change that you started implementing? Was it easy to overcome their resistance, or was the resistance really strong? Were there any difficulties in the process? And what did you do? How did you deal with the people who objected change? Well, actually, your questions had been expected in terms of resistance. Yes, we did expect resistance from people in the government, and we had prepared dealing with that resistance. Well, the first thing we wanted to persuade them in is that it's a long-term project. It was not a one-off activity. It lasts for 2 years. Second, was important that the top manager of the region got involved. With all the sessions devoted to that change, when the top manager present and participating in those sessions would be seen by everybody, they would understand also that that's going to last for long. We did not switch on the motivational things yet, I mean material, financial incentives, not yet. But what was important, we created, well, this HR reserve. We selected 16 people out of 2,500, 16 are for top managers, and 45 people selected in the team of change. So every manager now says that they have a person who will be able to substitute them at any time if the current manager fails to perform. That's an important motivator, making people engaged. And another important thing, we did not try to scare anybody. We didn't tell people if you fail to adapt to it, you will be expelled. No, but we feel that if people feel themselves uncomfortable with that new system, they will live by themselves.
Vadim Alexandrovich, you always start by touching the most sensitive issues. People, were they happy when they were obliged to work? You were one of the key figures standing by the national projects to be implemented and responsible for the national methodology. What is needed for the successful public administration system? Or in other words, what is your vision with respect? What will you be happy about some elements of the system of the public administration in Voronezh region? At least they would supersede your expectations. Not only Alexander Viktorovich was suffering from your questions. It is a very hard question. I wouldn't overestimate the role of the national projects, but what should be in the focus of our work on the national projects? The topic of the public administration. We have been discussing for many years system of public administration. It's still on the agenda. Does it mean that nothing is changing? Not of course. Huge results, huge progress have been attained for recent years, and it allows us saying that it's high on the agenda and it could be a guarantee of further movement ahead. So quite often quite skillfully we need to take this into attention. Guillotine mentioned by the Prime Minister at yesterday's plenary meeting, events regarding the transformation of the business climate, some ratings, and increase of Russia stepping up in doing business rating to the 31 place, a breakthrough in the public services area. So huge strides have been made recently. Now we have another challenge to overcome. It is somehow related to the implementation of national projects, priorities, and targets. And key common task for us should be common understanding of objectives and actions while implementing national projects. And it is very important while talking about transformation of regional, federal management teams. I believe common vision should be as a cornerstone of our approaches. And from this point of view, the question which I asked, probably I also would like to ponder a little bit about this in order to ensure the better understanding of this transformational objectives. So, which means involvement of the leadership of the regions. And each time we talked about the implementation and objectives of the national projects, it's very important to understand better the final, ultimate goal. And the implementation of this project should contribute to that. National Council was recently held, dedicated to the national projects. Now we see reorientation of federal and regional authorities to attain better results. And what is more important, these results split in various stages now playing a key element or a key element link of all chain of the management. So result-oriented processes now are at the cornerstone of this system. What could contribute to implementation and attainment of these goals of national projects? This could be a new system of communication which could be construed between state authorities, regional authorities, exchange of best practices, cooperation, collaboration, rather than competition. And in this format, probably we need to move towards our common goals. Maybe it would be not simply, but more efficiently. It is very important to start forming the library of best solutions, best practices, federal ones, regional ones. So working not in the regime of issuing orders, but rather on the basis of consultancies helping each other, and probably with regions we need to develop this consultancy methodological line which should be supported additionally. It is very important also in this large-scale systematic work to ensure and to orient each other towards this team spirit work. Team is becoming a very popular word, but team is not just a group of people working in the same premises, on the same premises, but people who expect the same results. And such a reading of this term could probably push us towards these results. So staff, as they were and have been and will be a central focal point of the management system. We can never get it out of this, and probably it should be come along with new approaches with staffing. And in conclusion, a very good proverb regarding understanding the goals. When a church was built, and the tutor or mentor asked the builders what they are building. This one of said, I have a very sad and monotonous work. It brings only illness and sickness. Second said that now he is paid quite a decent salary to feed his family. And while the third said, he said, I cut stones from which church would be built. It will be a happiness point for all coming to it for many years. So this is various and different approaches towards the work, understanding of this work. So the common understanding of this work could be a further incentive in order to attain these results in a new format. Thank you, Vadim Alexandrovich. Let's move on, discussing the strategy. Andrei Vladimirovich, it's not just debate, maybe a sort of comment or remark. So we had a slide on the left side. If this is groundwork below, then that's correct. So we are discussing stuff. Andrei, Vadim just told this. Of course, groundwork, a basis. How can we build without basis? Now coming back to what has been said. I mean those top management teams. and we discussed a year ago at Gaidar forum this from a point of view of the public administration and several blocks, and one of the blocks, what can we do with this stuff? I can support you in something, but we don't have any breakthrough on this topic. If we are quite timid in moving forward while training people, I don't believe that we can develop a strategy, and all the processes would be limping and clumsy. So the first story I would like to tell you, we haven't discussed so far issues of motivation or incentives for civil servant. It's not only about financial incentives. No matter what we are talking, regional, municipal level, all levels should be transparent, and maybe incentives would be different for decision makers and for the developers of the projects. Any attempts within the national projects are already made, but they are so timid that they hardly produce any results. But like in business, you have a specific KPI. If you reach it, so we can duplicate this in civil service. I know in Ministry of Economic Development, Minister was worried about this, but it cannot be done on a systematic basis. Can we make some adjustments? Yes, we can. I personally, with my colleagues, with deputy ministers, was responsible for these things in the public administration, and these proposals were discussed last year at the Gaidar forum. The second story, how can we assess, evaluate these persons? We have made a try with the reserves, which are now being gathered in these reserves. But this is a small, tiny group of people, but a systematic database of those people who efficiently worked in city of Ryazan, Voronezh, and Oryol, and in other villages and towns and Chelyabinsk region, from which our colleague. And there is a very clear-cut scheme that this person has such and such results and KPI, and there is a procedure to employ this person if this system is not working. Even having agreed with this, and this person is proud of this church he built, then when I try to employ him, then he immediately disappear in the bidding processes. So if you pass an exam and you allowed to work in municipal or public service, or you employed by business and you are prepared to work in a civil service and to give some results, we need some opportunities to provide some services for this man. And it should be clear-cut and transparent. If a deputy head of Voronezh region or deputy mayor of the city of Voronezh worked very well, so he can be employed by other employees, like promotion, because we are risking to lose this stuff. And the third element, the whole story with these motivations, incentives or attestations, this is just a punitive element. Anyone participated in this? I happened to take part in one of these just for the selection of experts. It happened differently, and I've seen this when a director of a department, without raising his head, and people just starting interrogate an official, and I believe this attestation system should become as a history, or become a history, not punitive history, or just selection of gifted or talented persons to be promoted to higher ranks. And if we fail to do this number of things, or at least start dealing with a real tangible HR system, we will have big problems on strategies and moving forward. So, dear colleagues, I understand maybe I speak too harsh, but we discussed these things with many colleagues. We need to join our ranks, and together with you, your academy, we need to move it forward. Then it would be easier to implement these objectives. Alexander Viktorovich, what you said, especially by 80%, is being implemented. Those officials have been selected not by the officials of the Voronezh administration. We used special methodology to be applied for the selection of the high-ranking officials developed by this academy. So these are the people who are not completely interested in moving forward, pushing forward their candidates, while eliminated other candidates. So these names of candidates could be found at the regional, municipal level, and we didn't close their road to business. If you feel that you want to go to business, we won't prevent this. And when we would be prepared to propose something decent to you, you said it's open register. We would select another 45 wonderful persons out of 2000. Andrei Vladimirovich, I would like to report about the progress reached during the last year. I mean the common system of the managerial staff. At the regional level, this model works faster because they don't have any options to move forward in contrast to the federal authorities. They have a wider space for maneuvering because you're competing between each other and inside each other. So the situation is harder as compared with federal level. But at the same time, decision-making process is faster. So it works. And I believe that now pilot projects have been launched and all staff-related issues are being addressed. Pity that we don't have Mr. Soroka. He will be filled in about what we are talking here, and I would like to thank Leonid. Mr. Bosnakov, Ministry of Trade, is very active. So there is some movements in this field. Looking back from today, it feels that we haven't done a lot, but looking from the past, we can say that we've reached a lot of a big progress. But of course, we would like to see this work faster. And just a brief comment. So focused on human resources. At the previous meetings we discussed processes, top teams, so teams with this strategic reports, with those thinking. Just open a secret, to tell you a secret. I've talked to governors, and it was said that orientation on the strategic goals is very important. So now teams is laying stones or building a church. I believe they are enjoying while cutting these stones, and we will convince everybody that we are going to build a church. And it wasn't so easy. And dashboard were regarded as a toy given from the above, but until the third report, so we read the first report, second report, and after the third report, and he realized that there is no need to provide fourth report for me. We have 2-week cycle, and after that he knocked to my office and start talking about real results. Probably it could take several months, 2-3 months, but you shouldn't forget about this because sometimes at the initial stage people can hardly perceive this. It could reduce considerably the documentation. There is no need to sign some notes to me because we have discussed within 40 minutes everything, and we trust each other, and I believe what he is saying to me because he is my deputy. So it reduced considerably the documentation between us and between the lower staff. Colleagues, we are still on the first block, and we will gone beyond of this first block, but let's conclude this first block. Anything to add? Just exhaust my time limit. I just counting. A question to Alexander Viktorovich regarding the history of reports. How the system works. Deputy heads gets the report. How can we double check the report, the accuracy of this report? Just remember how we launch various projects. You come with the governor, but we immediately see the problems. How to convert this system in digital forms. So trust but verify. This is the Russian saying, as I say. Firstly, we have figures to operate, like saying 2 schools have been built. If I told that 2 schools have been built, but they haven't, then it can easily double check. So tangible results, and there is an independent center of verification of the information to be provided, a sort of analytical comparison of the data to be provided to upper echelons of power. So they built this form. So we have deaths to spies company positive elements, but still trust but verify mechanism is still in place and working. Let's continue this discussion, the processes. Maybe questions would be the final stage of this discussion. Speaks without mic. So, what a wonderful comment you made. Of course, you also participants in this meeting. Please use microphone.
Все перепутали. И в связи с этим я хотел бы поблагодарить вообще губернатора, что он включил.
In this regard, I would like to thank the governor for his involvement in this work with the support of RANEPA. But everything stumbles upon your slide on modernization of the social and economic system. You said right thing that it should be based on citizens, and I would like to get it from you on using those money which would be spent for these national projects to turn me into a citizen, so that I have normal property, to become a landlord, not virtual but a real owner, because utilities reforms have been launched, and that's it. It's a national disgrace. Can we successfully implement the utility reform? And my question in this regard: how are you going to change yourself in such a manner so that we are regarded as citizens? You are civil servants, you are paid, you have offices, cell phones, but you cannot create such a vision of the creation of a public administration system. This is a second question. Thank you very much for your question. Of course, colleagues will take this question, but now I have a feeling that now we are trying to build different churches. You are referring to a specific church, but on the basis of what you have asked, so that to ensure a better living. In the past, during the previous meetings and conferences, we have discussed the issue of involvement of the public in the public administration system, and the ability to hear and to talk to the public at large is one of the soft skills which should be available to any officials. But the public should also have the skills to talk to deal with the authorities. We all professionals in harsh criticism. When we, with colleagues from FTOM, worked on the feedback system, we discussed it with all present at that meeting, and we said that, of course, each individual could have a possibility to ask, to raise a question, and make a critical question. But this criticism should be taken efficiently when it comes hand in hand with some proposals. how to solve this system. So you need to be heard. You need to provide some solutions while assisting the authorities to look for combination of solutions. Yes, we are millions, and for some this solution would not be acceptable. And this solution could be worked out on the basis of the constructive proposals. I would suggest that we would refrain from these comments which cannot provide some solutions. Mr. Gusev said what his team has done over this year in tangible terms, so that the residents of the Voronezh regions feel these changes and benefits as compared with what they had last year. I believe such an approach should be used in terms of public administration system. And as a second moderator, I sometimes would stop you. And I agree, here we have participants in these discussions which can hear, and can be heard. We talked about various sides of this story. Public services, we are changing for you. Just a tiny accent. We are changing for you, for citizens. You probably heard about this, and this is the right.
This is the right thing to do. This is the purpose of all that change and the purpose of those results. Now, to complete this discussion about strategy, I was started discussing HR and so on. My question to Alexei is Khersonsky, Rosaccreditation, value-oriented management that you're doing, and the process of transformation of the top management team. Do people change, the team changes? What is the result of the change, or what's your take on that? Thank you, Alexei, giving me the floor about this heated discussion. It seems like I have to provide all the answers now to the questions raised just before. But to be serious, thank you, RANEPA. Indeed, last year we did a lot of work in the handouts to this meeting. What was mentioned that the project was completed, and there was mention of the project. Actually, your work has been completed in the project, and that was only the start of the project in our agency. But still, my observations are these. First, we're a federal agency. Last session I discussed what we're about, what's the purpose of our organization. My first observation, had we funded the project ourselves, it would have never taken place. This is an important thing, funding of such projects. We would have never hired consultants, so not be able to answer the people here why we spend this much money, etc. So the first observation from the project, it's absolutely important project for the agency, for us people working in that agency, not only the managers, everybody. But we would have never afforded such a project because of many constraints that we have. And some of the activities that classically should be done for implementing this approach, we wouldn't be able to afford that either. Or we need, because we have to complete an open tender process, but we need very specific things, and these are not very good for open tenders, so that's a problem for us. It's difficult to fund such projects. Like we discussed last year at the federal level while we're doing a pilot, but we would need a structure to which heads of departments, minister could go to seek funding without thinking about the budget, without going through all that hassle. That was one. Now, I need to answer some of the comments from the audience. Well, that was about for whom, for you or for us. Well, for the officials. Well, I'm against this word official, actually. Officials, when we talk about public administration, we're changing. We're changing for you. Like in the wardrobe, I turned on my coat. She looked up on the watch and telling her co-worker in the wardrobe, it's 5 p.m. already, and they keep on coming in. Who is this lady? Had she done that working for the public administration? Well, is she an official or a wardrobe operator? The attitude, that's what matters, no matter where it is happening, in the government or elsewhere. It's people of varying ages, various culture. They come in to work early in the morning, mostly. They do their day's work and go back to the families in the evening. So when we're talking about change and HR, we have to envision not only the top managers, deputy top managers, governor, sub-governor. Well, you can replace this, but the people who do the daily work, well, this is the critical element. If we implement definite set of values, we can do it on top with involvement of the people who started the project. We will develop those values, agree on the values, and understand the values. But then is the process of implementing them down to the very bottom. This is just an example from the wardrobe. It's not being critical about RANEPA, but it's just showing that this should be cascaded properly from the very top to the very bottom. Once we change ourselves, that means that we change for you. If the values are defined properly, if for as long as the mission is correctly defined. Now, second, public administration. For a governor, clearly what it is. It's limited to a certain geographical area, etc., etc. But when we talk more generally about public administration, the federal level, you need to have in mind that all high-placed officials or politicians, they are also simple heads of their teams, no matter how high in the hierarchy they are. And most of the time, they spend leading their teams. This is very important. Looking from this perspective at the public administration, it's a set of organizations with people employed by those organizations, officials, public administration, status, etc., etc. That's a different story. So when we started our project, and what was important for us is to combine two things. On the one hand, we had to keep in mind the general value objectives of the public administration in general. But on the other hand, we had, and here I'm talking about my particular agency, while our specific function, and Alexander spoke about that, first we have to define our mission, to marry the understanding what the public administration should look like at the given point in time with the functions that we set ourselves, the objectives we set ourselves. So we defined that mission, wrote that down, captured based on the old rules that we know in doing so, and then for a long time we tried to communicate that to our teams, not only top managers, everybody, explaining the wall using the very many forms that we know of. The next level is values. To just tell you what the values are, there's nothing superhuman there. Trust, teamwork, technology, competence. These are the values. But when we start discussing what with the teams, what comes out of it. Each specific person, and then again, they're not officials, they're private individuals for whom we are employers at this point in time. They would interpret that in their own ways. So the next step, and something that we have yet on paper in our project, so to these values, we need rules of behaviors based on those values, not the etiquette codes that normally done for officials. No, we want to be very specific about that behavior in your team, in your workplace, considering the specific features of the team. What does that value mean to you? So the transformation is going on in a hard way, and HR is important. If it's simply HR department, then the role is of course critical. Like during joint work on this project, 2 managers changed. They left actually, to be precise. They don't want to continue to going with the burden because there's a conflict. Daily public administration duties, and these were professional people. They knew how to operate in accordance with Federal Law number 79. But once the change started, once these creative things came around with its challenges, changing things, that came into an opposite direction. And people just say, I cannot cope with this. It's not my story. If it's a small agency like ours, then we cannot retain both types. And very important here, the story of support for the projects, so that they continue, they do not stop. Otherwise, well, we always have a choice. We need a person to, maybe to complete all documentation based on the Federal Law 79, so that nobody complains, find violations. Or we need a person who would help us in this transformation process. And Alexander spoke about what I'm going to talk about. He said, managerial toy. Indeed, at the start, that's how it is perceived. The transformation process perceived as a managerial toy. What we should demonstrate to the people is that it's not a toy. It would be a toy if you play with it and then we forget about it. Then we should continue to make sure the people understand that this is serious. First of all, you have to be convinced of the fact that it is serious. This is not at all. You should share that openly with your personnel. And some of the people are like hardwired individuals, officials, who know a lot about laws, regulations and standards, and it's more difficult to deal with these people, to persuade them to start transformation, to persuade them it's not a toy, that we're going to do that in earnest. Thank you. Alexei, thank you. Yes, clearly. Thank you for helping us out of strategy, going into processes now. Well, HR, is that a response to Andrei Chibi's question? He said it should not be in the upper right. Okay, well, Mike, I got a message here. Everything's okay. We've extended the time of the session until 7:20. Well, good. Well, formally, that part which is devoted to strategy we have completed. unless any colleagues from Alexander Gusev's anything to add? No? Evgeny? Orlov region. What does Orlov region think about it, what we just spoke about? Well, I actually have a report to respond to Alexander's speech, but actually what I will say here, I envy that they have this pilot project, not us. Consider the comments that we heard today. Let me draw your attention to a different aspect. Well, a lot of things mentioned. I agree that this is the right way to proceed, the strategic solutions, the process-oriented approach, etc., etc. This is good. And this kind of breaks the traditional culture of old officials. We had the period of the Soviet times, 1990s, and now we're in a new period. But one of the challenges facing us right now is to form those teams, modern contemporary teams who were trained to address today's challenges. And the federal authorities would try to hire the best talent that we hire. So we need to update teams all the time. We actually held a contest for young candidates, young talent, only from Oriol region, well, the same level of pay. So, and the second challenge is more than HR. When we form teams, when we have to address external and internal challenges to implement national projects and regional projects. In that, we need to make sure the authorities are open, but on the other hand, we have to involve the people. The first one doesn't go without the second one. You can be open. Once you are open, you'll get a response from the people, but you have to involve them. In my lifetime, professional career, I had different jobs, and I know the kind of response we can get from the people. So, to talk to people on an equal full footing, we need to first define the legal framework, then a certain distance, how to overcome the distance between people in conversation. Well, one of the problems I'm feeling in Oriol after Moscow is the problem of operable legal frameworks. Normally, today, it's snow, we have to deal with snow. And we get criticism unless we remove the snow on time. But this criticism should go through constructive channels. And we sometimes fail to inform the people about their rights and responsibilities, and that's an important thing to deal with. Another thing, local authorities. I have Moscow municipal deputies, very active ones, but in the regions, the local authorities have somewhat different functionalities and responsibilities. Sometimes they are omitted as we formulate strategies, but a lot depends on them making the initiatives and implementing those initiatives. And to final things, last year we implemented, I believe, a very interesting campaign or concept. All the plans for landscaping, construction, development, all those plans went through public discussion and voting. People set the priorities. They said, we want this to go first, second, that, and etc., etc. But when we're asking them, if we simply ask them, what do you want? We'll never be able to complete all the projects that we want. What we can say we have a budget of 100 rubles a day. We can do this, this, and this, and then we can get people involved, and that would be constructive. And then governors, audit, inspections, timing, coming in unexpected places, with always media together with the municipal, regional MPs, and controlling the operations, whether this whole process makes sense. And in the future, I hope we'll be able to work with your teams. Having accumulated the experience from other regions, you will come with even better practices to us. Thank you, Andrei. Well, since you're asking in public to do that, I have to make a public promise that will come to you with our experts. As one thing I also want to do, a request from our business, talking about public administration, we actually created a business council. We have three sectors identified there, and they address conceptual issues together with them. We wrote a strategy of development until 2035. So it's business, society, and regional teams that are important. Well, but all of them, what they say, we need less change. No, please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. We've approved the strategy until 2035. We have a national project. We've identified methods and tools for implementation, and we simply have to cover the road without setting new objectives and new tasks. That's what I mean, avoid change. Thank you, Andrei. It's like, well, like playing the devil's advocate, saying that no change is required. But then you said the opposite, that the change should be consistent rather than being a toy, that you play with it for some time and then forget about it. Well, really, we don't need much change like that, toy change. We need systemic and long-term change. Alexei, what CJ is doing is moving to column number 2 in the first. Okay. This is additional information for discussion. Clearly, well, the discussion started, but the process part, optimization and organization of the activity of the authorities, processes as a strategy. Well, and we have tools here, our methodological part, but I explain what it is. We want to save time, improve efficiency, and etc. Wasteless processes. We look at all the processes, the way we organize activities right now, and suggest how to improve. Well, how to make it in 20 days rather than 30 days, or in 2 hours and 5 days, or doing it with 5 people and not 10 people. But the whole system, all processes that we have, we thought, are they good for the objectives that we want to achieve? That's maybe, do we have this information? Well, the citizens, what do they need? Do we have the systems structured well enough to be able to analyze that? To tell us maybe we need other processes rather than optimizing the old ones. I'll say we organize the strategies as strategy, then we come to processes as processes. Methods of optimizing, having process approach to the activities of the government. I think that's the right thing to do. But where to get the people concerning these constraints that we have right now? We cannot hire, we cannot fire. We can only guide or channel the existing resources into new subsystems based on a new model of authorities. That's what we're talking about. And often, and it's interesting, optimizing business processes. This is always costs, right? We will always concentrate on costs and more want to achieve better results. But there's another part to it, social effect. And addressing life situation of citizens, allowing them to perform their personal objectives better is another important element. And the final part here, processes as people. It's just considering all this issue from this standpoint. Well, the question here, are people ready to accept those changes and processes? If it's at the same level, is it going to work? Are people ready to assume this additional responsibility? What about the competences? Do they have the competences to be able to work on the new strategy, digital competences among other things? So I would suggest looking at a different approach. Let's structure tasks that people have to address and then consider what we should do in terms of training of those people. And then also chart our plan 2, 5, 6, 7 years ahead. That's the brief intro. Then Natalia Stiveryova from Kaliningrad region. Can you share your plans, please? Thank you, Alexei. Well, first of all, I did not plan to present myself. We have a video, though. Colleagues from RANEPA, once they see the final video on the results of 2017, well, it has a bit of humor in it, and I hope it's going to be a little bit of fun. So again, I didn't plan to present. Anyway, I would like to thank RANEPA team because they have to do a lot of work in analyzing all the processes that we had to go inside the process of each ministry in Kaliningrad region. We spent 3 weeks together before I got in-depth understanding of the whole project. So because we're pioneers, it takes time and takes mistakes, but the pioneers are good at quickly analyzing their mistakes and correcting those mistakes. The center of efficiency that we're planning to have in Kaliningrad region could be called also a flight control center. Why so? Because it's changed from within for external customers. To be able to improve for external customers, we want to change inside. That's our approach. And please take this upcoming video with a bit of humor. Just have some fun after this heated discussion. Heaps of paper documents, duplicating information systems, insufficient interaction between different services. This is a failure of the Center of Efficiency in 2018 because it's not existent, and the main success is its creation. With its help, the government of Kaliningrad region is going to become the most efficient one, changing the interaction between human beings and the state. The quality, result, and client will become real things. For this, tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, or if not by 2021, we will create a platform, reducing costs, improving the speed of processes, incorporating new economic performance indicators, this remote control for Kaliningrad region. For the business, that would reduce administrative cost and burden and increase the accessibility of government data. For citizens, it would be a guarantee of high satisfaction rates, increasing the proportion of digital services and personalized services. The Center of Efficiency, a project for the future to maximally optimize and automate processes. The center really works. Many things being done for humans now, so further narration would be done by this robot. Andrei is our leader. That's why now we call him Terminator. Recently, he said that the Center of Efficiency was created for self-destruction. The mode of self-destruction has been activated. Well, that means the death of the traditional governance system, and for 7 days remain. Well, don't feel afraid. That's going to be a dramatic process, but not devastating process. In the process, we identified some arrears in transportation tax from Teutonites. So, measures would be taken to repay those arreared payments. But the very tax rate will be fixed, and this is also handled by the Center of Efficiency. My brief comment on this, please provide a response. Are your main stakes on digital technology, digitalization? Of course, but among other things. Digital technologies are, of course, important. We're all aware that unless we change the technology, we will not be able to change ourselves. No optimization of process is going to take place. But some areas, it is important. Well, personal touch is important. Well, social in particular.
It's digitalization and profit increase, cost reduction. I don't understand why transport tax was mentioned here. Probably it's up to our region, because we heard about different stories, increase of taxes, transportation taxes specifically. Our governor decided otherwise. According to the incentives and contacts between municipality and region, they are claiming it's not our money, so deal with it. So motivation or incentives are important, and it was decided to start working on this issue in combination in one team: federal officials, regional officials, taxation, traffic police. So we worked closely with the municipalities and regions, and in brief, I might say, if municipality cover 30% of debt, then it is entitled to get some bonuses and subsidies from the region, and it will definitely get it. So the centers of competence and efficiency should work on the same motivation to establish contacts between municipalities, regions, and other customers or consumers. Thank you. So such a huge addition into our discussion. Any comments, additional comments, or maybe tough moderation? As usual, comments, questions, or we just skip it after the third block of topics. So let's maybe someone provides figures. Andrei Vladimirovich, just trying to tune into the moderation tone on figures. I have a feeling that the main challenge in digitalization is to explain what it can bring to the ordinary people. Each time we talk about digitalization of the urban economics and taking the advantage of the presence of the governors, what we imply by that. So fighting for the people, create better conditions in the cities. It's very easy to move from Kaliningrad to other cities of Russia, like Moscow and St. Petersburg. But if you look at the Siberian region, Far East, and Urals regions, the main trend is people are moving abroad, and the pity is that these people are gifted and talented. So how can we ensure that the city is converted or moved into the city of services, and the generation of those young people or schoolboys today who live in this digital world in terms of the ordinary life, using their gadgets, so they are not the enemies or adversaries of these trends, but like carriers of these changes and trends in our cities. Today I heard 3 times, and what are we doing? I heard this 3 times about involvement. When we launched these projects, and the first stake we made, which was confronted harshly by our opponents, we said, okay, let's ask people what do they want, because the leadership is always based on the data. My deputy said so and so, and as I see, the situation should be such and such. But using our experience is completely different from the understanding of the younger people, younger generation. And in March of 2018, we launched a very tough measures regarding any project should be implemented on the basis of rankings. And after the creation of shortlist, what should be done in the first place and what should be done then. We collected this information in online services, offline, and we shocked after we got the results. So those proposals, which were formulated by municipalities in general, 18 million just came and put their votes, cast their votes on this project. But after we saw the results, so the results were 60% different as what we envisaged. This is so the question. What does it mean? It means that we need to introduce a quite understandable digital platform which would make the officials hear the voice of the consumers. If you have a bump along the road, and it was mentioned by respondents, then this is the priority for the work. If you see or identify a problem within the city, then it should be clearly discussed, identified, and brought to the attention of the authorities, because they are not mighty sometimes because of the budget constraints. And the question, if we identify 5 top problems with a budget of 250 millions, while in budget we have only 100. So this is a clear-cut interface of interaction with the citizens we are dealing with. And that should be the first requirement for the next 2 years, is that the Dobrodel platform, active citizen platform. So we monitored the efficiency of this platform, and in some cities they are working quite well. They are just put on Yandex Maps, by the software developers, so interfaces are easily done, and we manage to link the leadership and the citizens and services. I said about this before in this audience. We generated the name of these projects when we were trained by the technologies of the digital transformation, anti-Leviathan. So these instruments which should limit the area or the scope of activities of the mayor to avoid mistakes by this mayor, and this scheme would allow to agree upon the future plans and the priorities that would protect each mayor, saying we decided on these priorities together on the basis of the budget available. And that would be the question for the managers, like how can we manage the urban development processes or elimination of some barriers or problems. The story with the real monitoring, the problems which are eliminated. So far we don't have this tool available to us, or it's not used often. So everything is clear, everything is digitalized. So this bumper on the road was voted by this number of people, then we should eliminate this first. That would allow to urban services and harmonize their work and ensure proper control, open control over their activities. And people could influence the decision making by the authorities in terms of urban development. Once we don't have a tool, then any attempts to reach the administration by telephone would be in vain. If you look at the current regime, please try to change the school menu, lunch menu. Many people complain about this, but everyone is claiming that they are working on a bit basis. We talked about services like cleaning the snow on the streets, and I respect my elder colleagues, and Nikolai Viktorovich is saying that he just trying to make his mayor work more actively. Andrei Klitschko has just said he sent pictures from social networks. Voronezh, I know the mayor is. So the question is, what we are proposing, what we are suggesting? We propose these services from a point of view of understanding where this equipment should be used, whether it was of help to clean the streets or not. 3 years ago, this equipment cost as a spacecraft. Now it's cheaper, and we can use it to clean the snow and to monitor using the sensors which are used in the pilot zone in test mode. They show the history of and the volume of snow. So streets are clean, mayor is calm. So this service
должен быть реализован. Я уже не говорю об истории с ГЛОНАСС.
I'm not talking about the GLONASS system. GLONASS is a GLONASS. We see that cars are moving along the routes and buses are following their routes. But from a point of view of transportation of people by this public transport, probably do we need to send transportation or buses to this street or along this route in the first place? So the task is within the framework of the smart city or digitalized city is to make proper decisions if it deals with the cleaning of the city, which should be organized automatically. These cars should go there and there because they start cleaning from those streets. Street lighting. We still have this problem. Streets are partially lit. This is infrastructural facility. You can put a huge number of infrastructure which allow us ensuring services to be provided to the citizens. So the history with transport. Here we have a governor of the Voronezh region. I mention it for the 5th time. When you were the mayor of Voronezh, Japanese suggested launching a pilot project precisely in this city in terms of smart technologies. Traffic jams practically is a scourge for all big cities. And when the head of the transport department who designed these transportation systems, so how do they propose to solve this problem? Just put 30 million rubles and we solve this problem. The topic of smart traffic lights. I understand you have a happy birthday. I understand how it would be important and how it's working, but 3 minutes. Smart traffic lights is a case study which was implemented in Voronezh, and it allowed by 30% increase traffic circulation. And after we calculated, Japanese experts, our experts, then they concluded the same. And the last story with infrastructure and security. Infrastructure. On the sidelines, we discussed this topic. This is regarding the issue of planning of invest programs of the heating systems, how it should be done, or how it happened to be done by engineers of the companies or municipalities, because municipality is responsible for this. This tube was laid down 20 years ago, and then it should be replaced, and it's good, but the leakage is in another district. So Russian technologies allows using heat visors to monitor the condition of the pipes and increase by 11 times efficiency and the costs of the modernization of the heating systems in order to ensure the proper pressure in the multi-store buildings to avoid some leakage and breakdowns of the system, because we are not using the system. And security case, once again, the key requirements: social security and environmental security in public places. People would like to feel secured. Today's security systems, not only the video circuits or identification of faces, and the Russian companies, which are quite competitive, they are selling these technologies to foreign countries. So our task to do it in Russia, because it would considerably increase the level of security, and those policemen, they overwhelmed by the workload, especially the situation with the people lost or missing people. This system would allow to find a track or track down these missing persons, including criminals. All this security, transport, control, and transport model of this city in terms of packing lots and so on and so forth. And the system to deal with people. The first module would engage key services, urban services, and this should be gradually incorporated into our cities. This is the main idea of the smart cities, and this digital platform to synchronize urban services, because with involvement of the people, and partially we could solve this problem, but in order not to spend a lot of money and not to make additional mistakes, we should use these solutions, which are more than 180, to put into the open data bank in order for introduction. And to use incentive and control measures, we can manage, together with our colleagues, governors, to implement this project within 5 years. The minimum standard of the smart city, which would be approved on March 31st, January 31st, and we gradually start introducing this with all cities with a population of more than 100,000, and that system could be applicable also to other small cities, and of course several dozen of cities which are participating in this project, Ryazan, Voronezh. We try to increase this minimum standard because the key task is to learn how to introduce these key strategies and technologies which are now available. These are digitals. These are figures now, they are available by the price, and we have experienced how to introduce them. So this is the work for 5 years. And in conclusion, as a provocative notion, this is not the Russian city, but system of a digital twin. This system allows automatically to evacuate in terms of emergency from one part of the city to another part of the city. So on the screen you can see everything, including dynamics, contracts, and so on and so forth. There's this municipal district of the Shenzhen city with a population of 4.8 million people. So all the things, including infrastructure, electronic cadastre, so was done for 3 years. This is one of the best practices. In terms of digitalization of the urban economies, we are not dragging behind desperately. And what we have now, we are moving proactively, and we could become absolutely competitive in terms of turning our cities in the cities of services where decisions are made on the data analysis, and where I can influence constructively and provide my solution openly, so to be supported or not supported. This is a difficult thing, even in terms of dealing with the population. But if we fail to do so, then we would be desperately behind. Let's start moving along this road. We have all these technologies available. Plan is developed. Our task is how to learn to do it comprehensively. And in conclusion, we almost prepared the special program for city managers or teams who would be dealing with this digital transformation, should be trained to do so. So mayor, it's not about bad or good mayor, but mayor sometimes is not aware of the availability of these technologies. So any training, any innovation, any reforms, especially in the area of digitalization and its introduction, requires a lot of staff training, and we rely on RANEPA, and in this regard we will make a breakthrough. Our task is to provide a tool to use these competences. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrei Vladimirovich. Just briefly, without getting into debate, don't forget that we need to help our cities in terms of having this cheap but also by providing equipment. Of course, there's no magic wand. This is a serious issue. Moscow has transformed. We talked about Moscow with several governors. And the question is, when we don't have such financial resources, not only Moscow or Moscow region, some capitals, Western capitals, are richer from the point of view of resources. So we need to solve this issue gradually, and openness of information for the developers can provide a new system of the development of the cities, new economies, and for small cities that could provide a second chance. Anyone willing to challenge this? We are looking at different experiences. Nizhny Novgorod is a very comfortable town. Let's start to get something better. Let's talk about our experience.
Люблю свою страну. И
I like and I love my country. I love Ryazan, Voronezh, and my native town of Chebaksary. But if we are talking about the genuine patriotism, constructive patriotism, it's not just use these slogans, but rather to move forward. If we can compare ourselves with those better us, then we can efficiently compete with them. If we are saying just let's skip this foreign experience and let's consider this city as the best city in the world, I respect the governors present here. Please ask those people who are living there. Are they happy with the way they live in these cities? If you got comforted with that, with these speeches, we can oversleep the situation when young, talented people, after graduating our universities, leave for foreign countries from the very wonderful city of Nizhny Novgorod or live for China, for example. So let's avoid this situation. Patriotism is a quite active, constructive understanding of the problem while looking for a solution. And from a point of view of introduction of these smart decisions, we have something to be proud of, like in Nizhny Novgorod. So they used Japanese technologies, now they use their own. Nevertheless, let's get some applause to representative of the Nizhny Novgorod. Probably we can fill in these boxes. Andrei Orlov, deputy head of the government of the Ural region. Tver is better. Coming back to the digitalization and government authorities, and probably I would not open something new, but maybe to focus ourselves on the fact that digitalization means openness in the first place, and this openness generated by digitalization, which is being following us quite fast. We are trying to learn to live in the age of openness using our competences or cultural traditions, background. We're trying to get used to this open digitalization.
And I believe what we need to do right now is to maybe organize a training course for public administrators on how to live in the situation of openness. Openness doesn't simply imply openness of data for developers or for the other areas of business. Openness, and we discussed that today already, the openness of governance, or is it simply the openness of information? So what kind of openness that should be? How much those digital data in public administration should be made public? How much should we open them for business? And now again, asking the academy, the RANEPA again, it would be great if you develop this course for the authorities, among other parties, to train people live in a situation in openness. You can do that for your students and public at large in this country. This is my comment on digitalization of public administration and contribution to this discussion. Well, I make so many promises today on behalf of RANEPA, but since there's a request coming, I have to comply. Like we did, what we did in Orlov, we do in other regions. There was a request, something about training course for management teams. Well, we can start that. Start with that project immediately after the conference. And Andrei Orlov from Tver region also has this request. So everything associated with openness. Okay. We'll do that in your region. We'll test it on municipal teams, and we apply that to other areas, other teams. And training. We no longer train individual managers. We're training teams. So Dmitry, I have a few words to add. To continue, well, personnel is very important, of course, but the discussion, and thank you all the panelists here for sharing your experience of implementing this model. Thank you, Alexander, Andrei, well, the story about smart cities, really it's a breakthrough story. But we shouldn't be forgetting one thing: this digitalization and openness is not an aim in itself. And replacing ourselves with robots in 740 days. The purpose, there is a real purpose behind that, to improve the quality of service and improving the trust people have in the authorities. Well, but because today, well, that was vox populi, one person said something is wrong. Thank you, Dmitry, for taking that blow, that criticism. But the situation is this. It's actually worsening in terms of trust of people recently, although that's a satisfaction factor number one in evaluating the performance of regional and federal authorities. In regional ones are closer down to earth, where people, they're easily approachable, more open to criticisms. And now we're in a situation where the level of trust in federal authorities, regional authorities, is gradually going down. This is a process that's been going for the past half year. No reasons we see for this trend to change, not as yet. So, what can change the situation? And this is something we talked about a year ago. And we probably need to make a step behind to later make several steps forward. The priority of this project is changing the quality of life of people in specific territories, not changing the public administration for the purpose of public administration so that they feel better, as officials get better pay. No. We need change to make the authorities more efficient and improve the lives of the people. Although there's one phenomenon there. People who are most dissatisfied live in Moscow. Although we know Moscow is one of the best cities of the world. But the better we're off, the more we want. We immediately forget that yesterday we didn't have a smartphone or Wi-Fi connection. We get used to good things very quickly. The further we go down the road, the more we want. This is normal, and we have to be prepared for that. And the main issue right now then is what the authorities can do, what tools to use to communicate with the people, to talk to the people, ordinary citizens. The purpose of all the changes in the administration. It is the public administration in the service of these people, and being able to talking to people in the same language online. Yes, well, we have public opinion surveys, and we can use the results of those surveys to adjust our activity. But the technology is this right now. In each particular city or village or municipality or region, we can receive feedback online. And it's not only feedback to the authorities, also help and involve the people, normal people, through simple tools to involve them in interaction to change the quality of life together with the authorities. Last year, we said together we're going to change it together. But this is not a present to the people, right? This is something we should do together with the people. People should get involved in dialogue through smart tools of the smart city. We have a project which is called an indifferent citizen. 2 years ago, we analyzed all the previous project to that effect on the quality of feedback. Actually, in Russia, this is now one of the most advanced projects. One in Moscow, one in Tyumen. They are advanced, but not as much. people can provide information that sometimes they get a reply and some things change, but that should not be the end of the conversation with the citizen. This project in different not indifferent citizen is never stops. And this citizen is not indifferent. They want to change. So let's get them involved. Give them an opportunity to grow. Give prizes to these people to motivate them to continue even further. This is a new thing. It's easier to manage people who do not have a voice. They keep silent, and we know what to do for you. This is easier for the authorities. But digitalization and new technologies have changed this paradigm. This cannot stay like that any longer. You have to talk to the people online and get people involved online. All of the things we're talking about, the smart city and other projects, are aimed at this particular purpose, to make sure people evaluate this change, feel the change, realize that the change is happening, and as a result, the level of support of the authorities conducting unpopular reform, people who think that those reforms are the right thing to do. When the authorities do some things which are by definition unpopular, if there's trust, people would support you. We're not experts in management. Sometimes people know better. But for this, we need trust. Trust in a particular governor or mayor. They would explain it to us. Well, the governor will explain it to the people, and people will trust him. And what we're doing here is getting back 1 year back. Like we said, the main purpose of all this project should be the improvement of the quality of life of people and improving the level of trust in the authorities. And this is the ultimate objective, and should be kept there. Even the expert community should keep focus on that. And of course, the politicians should do that as well. Thank you, Konstantin. A vivid speech. Let's complete the third element. I'm sure we're going to have many, many questions, and we'll try to entertain all those questions. Okay. Digitalization is what I spoke about at the very start. Why do we want to change the processes? Remember, I talked about that. Well, some of the things you said, I wanted to say at the end, in wrapping up of this session. But still, personnel. There are three elements here. The concept of HR support, the integrated HR cycle, and HR service. These are the three elements. Well, when we're thinking about 3 or 6 or 12 things ahead, the strategy, and 12 years, what it should look like. And here, we're not talking about individual aspects of educational system. What we're talking about, what to do inside the public administration. But HR as a process, an HR system is a set of definite technologies supporting everything above it. And number 3, colleagues, the role of HR service or HR department is huge. Who is going to support all these new values? Who is going to help the managers change themselves? And Konstantin, thank you for this introducing this term trust for us. The government of Ryazan region, that was a project based on trust, right? and this was the ultimate purpose of the governor and yourselves. Can you please share your experience? Dear colleagues, good evening. Well, my report, written report, says good afternoon, but it's evening already. So in the time remaining, I try to be brief and very concise, because it's late in the day. Of course, clearly, today's age of change, where we have defined strategic directions of development, a lot depends on HR, maybe 80% of success or efficiency with which we achieve our goals. And working with personnel should change. We should change that system for us to be able to change, for people to place more trust in us, so that we can operate in such a way, in an atmosphere of trust. And of course, to hire good people and then train these good people, we need to make the government service attractive, not only in terms of salary. For public administration, we need more accessibility of young talent. For this, we need to move from the supporting function of HR to forming a new system, a system managing human capital. We discussed that before. There had been a lot of discussion, and there is experience available in other countries and even in some of our Russian companies, most advanced ones. This systemic change from HR support to human resources forms a new approach to public administration in this area. We call it HR 4.0. Why? Because, well, recently the symbol of change has been the concept of Industry 4.0. The fourth industrial revolution calls upon a new approach, including approach to management. And HR management, of course, should comply with the requirements HR 4.0, with people with the right competences coming on time, and they have to be supported to be efficient, not simply put them into government offices. They have to be continuously trained if required. Also, we need to form teams to meet external challenges and for new areas of activity to attract and retain good people with continuous self-development, but green technologies and other advanced technologies that require involvement and self-development. We don't have time for evolutionary process here. Normally, we don't have in this country, and HR management does not have time for evolution either. We have to change quickly. We have to adapt quickly to these new challenges. There are many concepts of HR support. We knew that we should change. Now we place higher demands on that. Trust, as you said, is the most important thing that we need. We need the trust of the people. We need to change the qualifications. Well, digital qualities skills are very important. Sometimes we have to define new matrices of competences. There's harsh competition to hire young talent. To be able to do that, we want to establish a whole new system of HR management which would comply with the strategy of the region. That had been a long process with internet interactions with people for a long time. People criticized it, made suggestions, It happened from April until December, and that was an important and constructive process. So we have to meet this strategic objective. The strategic aspects of providing HR, the right HR potential, would be defined in the concept that is under development right now. The key issues: what kind of HR resources do we need, how to attract, select, and retain them, and manage them. At the end of last year, together with our friends from the President's Academy, the experts in this area of a modern government, started studying the existing system of HR support in the region. The process is going on, but we have already identified the key areas. Over the past 2 years, we've managed to form the basic team that's ready to implement the approved strategy for the development. All decisions previously were evolutionary. That's why, despite reorganization of a number of executive authority, we had about 96% of job positions filled. That maintains a certain level of efficiency, of course. Now, though, about 50% are in service for more than 15 years. And we need, of course, replenishment, new personnel, with fresh view of the world and with the experience in other sectors of the economy. What we did in September 17, and when there was governmental elections in the region, we had planned cuts of personnel, and we've achieved the limit there in terms of optimization. With one manager having only 1 to 2 reports, that increases the load on the people who stay. There's the reverse side of the coin there as well. Since there were cuts in personnel, we managed to increase, to assure a slight increase in their wages. And we believe that's going to work as a motivator. You know, my colleagues know for sure, if it's not a donor region, then managing, it's the Ministry of Finance who manages the headcount of public administration of the region, not the regional head. Therefore, Dmitry and Alexei, you're in a similar situation, right? The officials that stay, we want to make sure that they are as efficient as possible, and that must make for the attraction of public service. To resolve all the issues facing us in this minimum amount of employees, we need to use all mechanisms available to us, in particular tutorship and other things, or training, etc. Often-wise, as happened with very few personnel, we cannot provide this service because service is maybe connected to a particular person, and the person on vacation. We want to stop that. Turnover rates is not more than 10%, and most offices this has been reduced since previous years. Although in some bodies of authority, people leave having worked in the position of less than 1 year. Well, that may be associated with the peculiarities of the hiring process, selection process, or maybe insufficient work to induct, to get people comfortable in their work. Well, concentrating on that would make it possible to save 30 working days that's otherwise lost. And the next HR cycle implemented in the region is using an integrated HR cycle, where to support HR function, all areas are addressed at the same time, from the selection of candidates to managing the organizational culture, and everything would be based on a single set of methods oriented based on the strategy for the development of the region. For this, we would use strategic building blocks of competences, connecting the competences of our personnel to the strategic objectives of the region. This tool will be developed. It's not available as yet, but we expect it to be available in the first half of 2019. Second, this integrated HR cycle would help us create a single HR service for all authorities of the region. There is such experience from other regions as well, very positive experience. Then centralizing the processes and services in terms of the use of technology will be made more easier, and we will be able to control a whole range of HR processes. Implementing technology, especially digital ones, would require training high-class specialists, behavioral specialists, specialized HR people. The creation of this centralized HR service will help us at hiring such personnel. A specific configuration of the service is being finalized right now together, the work being done together with RANEPA, and also very important to match the training and development and evaluation of employees. For this, we are forming a corporate university of the government of Ryazan region and implementing training programs. We would emphasize practical skills. At least half the time spent in training would be in practical and project work. This is important. This is our option of individual training. This corporate university would become center of competence in evaluating the performance of public servants. The motivation system. We have a balanced scorecard system for individual units, and we will use a formalized approach of evaluating the performance, and incentives would be based on that. People responsible for individual indicators will then feel how their personal income will be affected by them achieving their targets. And implementing this integrated HR cycle, we hope once we do that, we'll be able to effectively compete against business companies for young talent, offering social lifts, creating possibilities for self-actualization and good salary. What's been done already, in addition to forming the strategy? Well, one of the important steps in this direction was forming an open personnel reserve. 2017, we adopted a new approach after a series of events with RANEPA called the Managerial Resources of Ryazan region. It was an open contest with public officials involved, everybody who wanted to participate, already hired by the government. They were given an additional opportunity to get a better position. It was 40,000 people or candidates that we now have in the database. Initially, that was the initial electronic database that we used to fill the positions that were open back then. Then we formed this list of HR reserve in Ryazan region. There was a commission decision to open this process to the public, and using the procedures of RANEPA, we are now continuing this process in building up this HR reserve for public administration. Thanks to all these activities and all stages in this process, we now have data on more than 2,000 people who have been qualified and who we have established a special portal for further procedures to digitalize the whole HR system, and it is going to be an open one. Well, like other regions, our region needs to make a lot of change. In particular, we should become more client-centric. We should address the actual problems that people have. That should be the main motivator for public officers. We need to involve the public officers in that process to create a special culture of efficiency and managerial success, something that underlies the whole process. A separate objective is stimulating project activities, especially when it comes to regional components of national target programs. We need to use more non-financial motivators, in particular career management of employees who succeed in that process. I'm sure project activities should help us move forward. We have very good staff now. Some people from RANEPA help us, and that's very important. This project work is extremely important and very good. If that work at the regional level matches the general effort at the national level. And what we need to do is not only concentrate on supervising that activity, we should support that activity in all ways we can. And we need to build project links for national projects, because they are always very broad ones, concentrating on many industries and many tasks. And I'm sure we can agree on how to do that best.
So the formation of the monitoring tool on the organizational culture to serve the needs of the society, to get specific results. These results would be integrated in all cycles of HR system, into the training courses, educational systems, curriculum. We will form a class of managers with these values, and they would translate these values to their workers. So in such we will create a system of additional incentives for creating the specific norms of conduct. What we can expect, like in other regions, we create centers of efficiency which would form approaches to the implementation of the HR policy and the entire HR cycle I mentioned before. We set up specific unit, and we attract to work in this center HR experts to work as trainers and methodologists. On the basis of this educational processes, we expect to get lower costs in public administration, better confidence in public administration, and increase in general the satisfaction and comfort of living standards of the people. Of course, much needs to be done to form this HR system 401, but in any case, we do not have any other options, and we need to attain these objectives. And the ultimate objective is quite understandable: to increase trust in municipal authorities by increasing the living standards. Streets are clean, public utilities are not increased regularly, and which shouldn't be a basis for discontent of the local population. So this intervention was very specific, devoted to specific topic. We need to be changing many new technologies available to us. We open in the social media and public networks, and I also look through the messages I get in these social networks, and other authorities are monitoring the incident network, so-called incident, and they're trying to respond to all appeals, all the questions. So the maximum time for response is 24 hours, and the time for solution depends on the difficulty and complexity of the issue. If we feel that some additional information is required, then it will take up to 5 days. If you are not happy with the results of our feedback, you can make your comments. And of course, we will take part in Active Citizens program. We have a similar system. Your home is Ryazan, and we will have more engagement in the social networks. Thank you. Nikolai Viktorovich, so you have spoken for everyone. I mean, those who wanted to ask something to complement Chibis. Now I understand. Now I see what you've done over this year, and I saw this presentation with a single server. Let's applaud to the governor of the Ryazan region. By now means I would like that you have an impression that Nikolai Dmitrovich has been dealing with the staff of HR, and Natalia together with other guys with processes. We just split these tasks and agreed who will speak about what. Otherwise, we should have reserved this audience till tomorrow. Thank you very much. Questions from audience, ladies first, of course. Microphone. Please use the microphone. I just would like to say I like the intervention of Konstantin Abramov. I agree fully with this opinion. Authorities should serve not the authorities but the people, and citizens should be in focus and a priority, and all their needs should be taken into account and implemented and realized. And as not as deputy but a resident of Moscow, regarding your saying that Muscovites live well and better off, that's not so. We have a lot of competent, well-educated people who realize what is happening around them, and in contrast to other people, they understand the reasons and the roots of these problems. That is why Moscow has just a big number of these people. I would like to tell Dmitry Anatolievich, my daughter has graduated from this academy, and 15 years ago I was here, and I came back and I was shocked. This distressful monument near this academy. This is a symbol of inefficiency of the public authorities. So much money invested into this, and you are sitting here in these small rooms while having at the same time this big steel and glass building. This is so. Thank you very much. Please solve this issue. We have already started doing this. I wouldn't like to raise this topic, this monument to the problems in the Republic of Italy, not in the Russian Federation. If you look back to the history of this. One more question. So you have this temperature, so you measure this temperature of the society more often than we do, and you have a more well-informed approach to this. Have we passed this point of no return? And it's not enough to talk only about confidence to the authorities. If this question is raised, then it's nonsense. You should have changed the authorities. And in this regard, I believe let's not supplement question with interventions. Let's provide specific well-being. Regarding confidence. So the second part is a rather political one, confidence. We are talking about the confidence of the public or among the public to each other, to the colleagues at work. So this phenomenon which allows the society to develop more efficiently, the higher level of confidence between people to authorities, the more successful is the society. This is a direct linkage or relationship. In order to understand better, are we going in the right direction? So we study this KPI in terms of how successfully we are developing and what potential do we have. Just briefly, yeah, I understand. Nikolai Viktorovich, thank you very much. You participated in this project with numerous participation, with high budget. This is one of the example which is A, positive, and B, which could be even more efficient when a person is saying something and many people listening to this person, or like press conference, or and online we're trying to understand the response of the people at large. So now the level of the possible engagement and interaction online, we now can understand the response of the people. We're saying that this number haven't show up, and maybe next day you will say said something. This is about the feedback and the response of the authorities. I see the reaction of the audience. Maybe you will react to what previous speakers said, Andrei. From a point of view of Nizhny Novgorod, these are the examples. Probably these changes are observed in many regions of Russia. Probably the title of this session, Changing for You. Probably we a little bit misuse these terms. Not unhappy manager can serve for the sake of the happy persons. We don't have totally happy managers who are dreaming about working in public authorities. And the old-fashioned officials, they're quite conservative. And our task is just start moving. Within the society, we need to ensure the openness of the authorities, which means the engagement of any citizens and leaders of the public opinion. The same we observe in the Ryazan region. And this presentation was very interesting, and just to share some ideas in our region, we have open bids for the high position deputy heads of administration and deputy governors. You can easily go to the internet site and you will see how it works. We deal and work jointly with RANEPA. We asked at some point in time why we are doing this, whether governor can nominate his deputy or not. Yes, he can. Then it was decided in order for those commissions, we need to nominate people from the public, from the industries they are working in. So, Minister of Culture, 861 persons nominated themselves in order for this position. Everyone was prepared to manage the culture of the entire region. When we finally limited this number up to the 31 persons, we gathered 100 persons, and using this digital methodology to select 7 electors. So this commission was comprised of 13 persons, head of the Central Library, Conservatory, and so on and so forth, so theater and so on. So they were joined by the representative of the public chamber, public council, deputy head, and so on and so forth. So it produced a certain level of transparency and openness. And finally, when 4 finalists were presented to the governor, so the public regarded this person as one of them. So a key megatrend is quick changes. So officials could be of different formats. And once we are not enough efficient in changing ourselves, changing culture, corporate culture, on the basis of the existing methods, and not everyone could be a governor or deputy governor. And we also looked into the motivation or incentives. And the bigger motivation is to attain the objectives set. If he has feedback from the public, this is the first motivation. Second is to deal with other leaders and heads of departments. So we're trying to develop a certain scale of assessment or performance measurement scale for the public, for the officials, so that it would be a motivational push, and HR reserves supports this. So we assess our reserves. 2,200 people were in the reserves. One of these persons was nominated as a deputy governor. He's not a brother, a relative, or to anyone. Just a person who has specific competences. If we are lucky to learn how to choose these people, then we will succeed. All changes sometimes are quite painful, and to break down the conservative HR system, old-fashioned system, is practically impossible. It was decided with the governor. We set up two blocks, civil servants and HR, and separately HR. And we invited persons who had never had anything with the old-fashioned civil services. And we try to assess these methods, and we consider it with the RANEPA. If it turns out possible, then we did it. If not, we amended the existing system at the regional and federal level. We discussed this, and coming back to what we discussed, if we continue this session, changing the living standards of the people through the introduction of the efficient system of the public administration. If we learn how to be efficient, then all people feel the feedback. Thank you. Andrei, thank you very much. In my opinion, all important things have been mentioned at the decent professional level. I would like to thank our speakers. Some details which I would like to comment on. The public administration system could be changed from outside. So the system is created to be protected from the impulses, external impulses. And it was demonstrated how it could be successfully working. I would like just to mention the following. Law is not perfect, but unfortunately it has many loopholes which allow to introduce new technologies and to contradict this process. So we need to change this in different terms, maybe to spell out more clearly the procedures, way of procedures. It's not about discussing whether it's good or not. We need to create a single set of rules of play, and after that start changing it. Confidence. It should be introduced deeply into the management system at the lower positions, which these officials should have bigger trust to the superiors. That is why I believe now we face the need to improve structures from the point of view of their simplification, when one head could have two deputies. This is a progressive team which would be capable of solving something. As far as the principle of equal access is concerned, then it is based on the bidding system. Ministry of Labor is working on that. That would allow you to add fresh blood into to the system, and you will see that would be more efficient as trying to invite the people you know. Of course, you should make a stake on professionalism using specific criteria and methods developed by this academy and so on and so forth. I believe it's possible, and this civil service could be morphed into the efficient tool, because many are looking back at Moscow, how it is reacting, and we need to invent something for ourselves. Thank you. Thank you very much, Leonid. There's bad news. Now we are going to be expelled from this room soon. We still have some speakers. What I suggest, Mikhail, probably you try to sum up the results of this discussion, and we will try, probably if we have some time, we would like to listen to Atabek Hasanov. To know their experience from CIS countries. So we will see how it will go. So maybe in 10 minutes.
Давайте все-таки вот реализуем, да, замысел. Да, спасибо. Михаил.
Mikhail, Dmitry, first of all, thank you very much for having your birthday celebrated in such an informal manner. And summing up our discussion, it was very interesting for me to listen to what other people are saying about the existing best practices, and these 3 benchmarkings remain the responses to what we are doing, who is doing, and how we are doing, the process itself. Process also implies not only the current processes, but also the project activities, which has been regarded as a priority from a methodological point of view. And now we are coming to a stage when it is a routine or a daily activities, and many regions, Voronezh region, Ryazan region, they are focusing on improvements of these activities. But we all heard that all speakers, or those people who spoke from the audience, they always mention the feedback regarding those results citizens are getting. And in our analytical center, we are trying to work out a specific model, common assessment framework, which is used by the EU member states. This system, which is used by many countries, many regions, to assess the quality of the public authorities, because those ratings that are used at the federal level, from the presidential decrees up to the various ratings of RIA Novosti, we have assessed about 45 ratings. They still pursue some well-known results, and in fact we don't see any methods which could assess performance of these public authorities from a point of view of their structure, whether it's right or not. There are three targets. Fourth could be added to that, I mean feedback, which was mentioned here, but it's not on the slide. Strategy, what we are doing, HR, who is doing, and the strategy, what we are getting, what is the feedback, how it is efficient, and are we doing the right thing or not. So all these four elements in this CAF system are present, and we would like to present a certain system of self-assessment, not a rating, because probably all regions are fed with these ratings. And probably next year, the next session, we will tell you about this methodology. I believe it would be a good idea to collect these best practices while discussing them with each other. Maybe to start from a simple system of performance management, system of HR systems, feedback, in order to understand where we are and what we are doing and how the system is construed, whether it's right or not. And regions should deal with that, not federal authorities, because, how to say it, in order to have the system useful, the region should use it. If it is an additional rating or another rating, that would be a beautiful picture, of course, but I'm afraid that would not lead to final results. I share fully your approach suggested, but I believe rating should be done by an independent auditor, and it would be better that it would come from above, because it is perceived in real terms. This tool is working.
Konstantin, excuse me. We have to stop here. My apologies to Maria and Dalika Bek, because we're getting messages all the time that we have to wrap up. They're going to switch off the lights, right? Yes. So apologies. Thank you very much for participating. All the speakers, excellent presentations, wonderful. It was a great birthday for Potashin. Thank you. And apologies for people who did not have time to ask questions either. Do it next time. And before we leave, well, that means if you found this discussion useful, that means that change is happening.